started here. Ugh. We should be entirely ready now. Let's make sure that YouTube's being picked up. It should be. It's not. Now it is. Wait, what? Ain't nothing working properly here. Cool. We're going to test this again because apparently yeah, it's not. Cool. I love it when shit like that happens. Restream is not picking up YouTube chat. All right, whatever. I mean, I'm not even gonna lie. I'm just, I just don't. Social stream is. At least I can respond to YouTube if somebody actually types there. Although we don't really ever see YouTube show up, so it doesn't matter that much. Oh. I feel mostly exhausted today. I'm trying to think what are we what are we working on today? Oh. Okay, so, right, that's what we were going to do. Not a plugin. Edit. Tools. New C++. We need an actor. I see. Destructible. Destructible actor. There's entire sections of this game that we're going to have to like fix. Let's add another card. Lighting issues with some areas are very dark and need to have lighting fixed. This could be an issue with bounce lighting, or maybe just need to add some extra point lights or something like that. There's seriously an ad break. I just started. Did I spell destructible wrong? I think I did. I hate that. I hate that they keep doing this. I asked it to correct my spelling. And then it did, but then it didn't. Okay. The on begin overlap. This is really what we care about here. So we're gonna get rid of the tick because tick is not useful. Do we care about a begin play? I don't think that we do. There we go. And what do we care about? We care about this. It's like the only thing that matters almost. Okie dokie. So velocity multiplier. We're effectively taking a bunch of this stuff and we're just going to we're going to port it over because that's all we care about, really. Now, I guess like a capsule actually does work the best for this stuff, potentially. Hmm. Number functions can be made static. We can't do that. So we need to put something around this. Yeah. Actually, no, that this will work. This will work. Yeah. Okay. So we need a static mesh. This be a U static mesh component. And U property edit defaults only. I see. Float. Velocity multiplier. And a force multiplier. Okay, so we need to create the default the static mesh. Mesh equals create default subobject static mesh. Sorry. Just trying to think here of all the steps that we need to go through here. Do we want this to be a root component or do we want a regular root component? I feel like we want a regular root component, which would be a scene object. Root component. Yeah. Static mesh setup. Give me a moment. Oh, it's setup attachment. That's what it was. Okay. So then we need to have some way of saying, hey, we're just going to make this entirely. Let me double check to make sure that YouTube's actually working at all. That's not what I meant to do. Okay, yeah, I am live on YouTube. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to do the overlap, right? So we need to make it an overlap instead of, but then we also need to apply a force to the truck. So when we hit it, we hit it. So component. This is static mesh. To all channels. Block. Static mesh set collision response to channel. Vehicle. Overlap. The reason why we don't want to have it on block is because if it's blocked, then when we go through it, when we hit it, if the collision takes a fraction of a second too long, the vehicle comes to a hard stop because it's immovable. We don't want physics enabled on this thing until after it is hit. Actually, no, we could have a giant circle that just sphere that goes around the vehicle that just enables collision on these things. And then they become physics objects. I think I like that better. Because I think that we can check the overlap component. Yeah. Okay, sweet. Okay, so this be a trace channel? I feel like it would be a trace channel. I wonder if ChatGPT's still down. Should I use... What is the difference between a trace channel and a object channel? Every physics shape / component has one object type. Example, world static pawn, vehicle, destructible, UI, or custom, like traceable weapon, enemy, etc., etc. You assign an object channel on a static mesh skeletal mesh box capsule collider, any U primitive component. Trace channel defines what your raycast or sweep is looking for. It does not belong to an object. It belongs to a trace. Ah, okay. Okay, so we want a object channel. New object channel. This will be destructible actor. And then we go to vehicle. We go with overlap. So we have two options here, right? We can put the destruct. We can have the vehicle have an overlap, like a sphere that it's looking for. It's looking for a yeah, sorry. We can have the object looking for the vehicle, or we can have the vehicle looking for the object. And what that means is it depends on where we put the sphere of the object itself, right? So if we look at this, right, and we go like this, right? So we can have our little pylon, right? Beautiful pylon. Then we can have the truck, right? The truck here. Ooh. There. Right? So either we put a giant sphere around the truck, right? Or we put a sphere around the pylon. And when the vehicle hits the sphere, enters the sphere, this, let's get a different color for this. This becomes a physics object. Because a physics object can be pushed by the truck. So effectively, when the vehicle, it depends on like, which kind of sphere do we want to be the deciding sphere? Do we want the vehicle, or do we want it to be the object that decides when the object becomes, right? Because it's all based off of overlap, right? Guess I haven't really thought this one through how I want to do it. um, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by doing this inside of a blueprint, and then we'll get it working, and then we'll move it over into a non-blueprint thing. New folder. There's, for fuck's sake. Sorry. Blueprint class. Oh, how are you? I'm doing okay. How about yourself? Just getting annoyed with all the dings. It's like a constant state of I do one thing and then all of a sudden my phone go ding. Destructible actor. Um Classic JS being JS. For fuck's sakes. I am getting very tired of the constant notifications. See, I'm not sure if this needs to be a default root scene or not. Here. Okay, so this we need to do. How's your day going, by the way? New constructible environment. My main project is killing me. And projects will do that to you. See, ragdoll collision enabled query physics body. Objects that can be hit by the player. How's it going, man? I'm okay. My phone is just blowing up because my mom's coming back into town today, and she shared way too much information regarding her timeline of when she got back and like 3 days after she got back. And so she left the vehicle with she left her vehicle with us, and my girlfriend was supposed to take the vehicle in and drop it off at her friend's place that she's going to be going to when she gets off the plane today. And then that would allow my mom to just drive home. But because she gave us like 4 different dates, we thought she came in on Thursday. She's coming in today. And it's like, well, so now I'm getting spammed messages from between my mom and my girlfriend right now because my girlfriend's like, well, this happened. And it was just like, yeah, I know. I told my mom that you didn't drive in today because we thought she was coming in on Thursday, not today. And that is entirely her fault. Today's Tuesday, right? Anyway, sorry. Today's being a day. I blame my mom for this. Like, it is entirely her fault. Okay, so this blocks on everything. Not the camera. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so vehicle, this needs to overlap. And then we switch it out to a physics actor. Sorry. Wait. Query only. Ignore everything. Except for... Actually, no. Block everything. Vehicle overlap. Yeah, okay. So I'm like happy to hear he's recovering well. I don't know, man. There are worse things like brain surgery. Yeah, it's not that bad, and the notifications are gonna stop, but it's still annoying. No, my mom actually gave us the wrong date. You're more engaged in these kind of troubles than those other kind of troubles. Yeah. Yeah, someday. World dynamic. This will be a destructible actor. Sapped. Vehicle. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So this is a destructible actor. This, I think we need to compile, close this, and reopen it. So the UI updates for collision. Here. Well, good to see you're more. Sorry. So how's your game coming along, Bibber? Okay, and then the static mesh is block all, right? There. Right. Right. Okay, project settings. Let's go back to collisions. Edit. Ignore all except for this. There. Save. There we go. Okay. Tick. Ugh. Okay, what are we gonna do as the first one? I'm thinking trees. We start with, actually, let's start with these. Let's go with these first. There we go. Compile. Okay, so on begin overlap here, right? We see this. And this sphere here, we're just going to say, hey, the sphere radius, we're just gonna pop that up like that. Beautiful. And then what we do is we come into here, and this is the sphere here. And then what we do is we take the static mesh. And I think at this point here, this should probably be here, right? Okay, add over. But welcome back, YT chatter. Fuck, seriously, why am I not seeing the YT chatter? Now there's a... Sorry, Cola. Welcome. My my everything is not working correctly today. Just nothing wants to work properly. Yeah, apparently the YouTube chat's just not working. Let's see. Let's just do this. Give me 2 seconds here. I'm just gonna see if I can get this to work. Activate source. Okay, there. Activate source live plus public. There we go. I think now YouTube should work. If somebody's in YouTube and wants to say something, that would be great. It's working. You making game or just working Unreal Editor? I'm making a game. This is the game that we're working on here. I wonder if this is going to work. Will this go onto YouTube as well? Now it did. Okay. Now. We mainly use just as an FYI, we mainly do use C++ for things. Just because I find it easier to maintain. But I'm testing something, and in some cases that just means that just makes it easier to set collision profile name. And we go to the static mesh here, we go to collisions. And what we want is we want a physics body. Physics actor. I'm a professional programmer. God who can isekai anime girls. 2C developer. That was has to change in my mod. Okay. It is great. Okay, so other actor, we want to make sure that the other actor is cast to a BP. I've got to do part of this in. Wait. I wonder if I can ABS vehicle. Actually, I don't think that I can because I don't think that you can cast to an AVS. You're trying to make a game, but you're new at this? Yeah, no worries. Everybody's new at some point, right? All right, so on that we do this, right? We shouldn't have to do this at all, to be honest. We should just be able to do this because it's a physics object, and we only ever have this set up to overlap on only the singular object, right? So generate overlap events. Who is new to what? Nah. What language is that? I didn't expect another. Oh, it's Turkish, right? I forgot that you said that you were from Turkey. Could be the hour that I'm streaming at. But sorry, Cola. Welcome, and if you've got questions, especially specifically around, I can answer some Unity questions too. My Unity is not as good as my Unreal, but I can answer questions, and I can answer general programming questions as well. So feel free to ask. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Okay, so on begin overlap, we set to physics actor. And then on when we leave, when we're no longer overlapping the sphere, so on exit, comes from Vanta, who are country, the people who built things like roads or houses. Interesting. Drinkaloy. Actually, I have a question that's kind of mostly about Unreal Engine, but I only know a correlation to it in Unity and want to ask how that particular thing is done in Unreal, if possible. Go for it, Ribber. You can always ask questions. Like I said, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And call yellow cola to Fanta. I'm actually trying to make a hack and slash game. Nice. Hack and slash games are fun. Most of the time, 90% names are the same or similar. Between Unreal and Unity? There's a lot of difference in naming between Unity and Unreal. Not bad at coding though, but I'm bad level art. That's fair. I think we can, with the exception of Vibver, I think all of us can claim to be bad at art. But by all means, feel free to ask the questions. I'm bad at art in general. Okay. I'm making, is C# clone of Java? C# is Microsoft's version of Java. Wow, am I in the correct place then? I am happy to help with the art side as I need help and learning on the dev side. I can teach any language you could need, probably. And sorry, not can't. Wait, what? Oh, sorry. Wow. I read it as Ken in the first place. There we go. But you are fine exactly where you are. Don't worry about it. I'm not a particularly skilled artist, but I know programming, and I can answer questions. Do you think it makes sense to use ready-made assets for some things? I think that it makes sense to use ready-made assets for as much as it feels as it helps you get through your project. I can't I like my entire map right now is a ready-made asset. So like this map right now is an asset, right? I didn't make these buildings. Somebody else made these buildings. So like I can make buildings. It takes so long, right? That in order for me to make this level here, if I go like this and I zoom out, right? In order for me to make a level this big, it would take me forever. So if I had to make every single asset, it would just never get done. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with using ready-made assets. Now all of these assets will need to be edited because their textures don't fit with the art style that we want for the end game. So we're going to have to do editing to it. And the billboards I want to switch out for something else, right? So like ready-made assets are not bad. Don't let anybody tell you that they are bad. AAA games use ready-made assets off the asset stores, off of asset stores and stuff like that. So it is absolutely entirely fine. You can use ready-made audio, audio visuals of any kind, and it does not make your game an asset flip, and it is entirely perfectly fine. All devs do it. Like all game dev companies do it. Also, today is the asset giveaway for Unreal. So if you have a Fab account, go to Fab and get yourself some free assets today because today's the day. It's these three assets here. Go get yourself some free assets today. That replace with plugin in Unity would then wait. So my question is pertaining to importing instances into the game engine. So the thing is that I have always preferred set designing in an external 3D software like ZBrush, Maya, Blender, etc. Because of course that's where I have fluency. So the thing about most game engines is that for instancing to be applied to imported assets, they are typically scattered on the level in the engine, but in Unity, the way I tackle it was importing objects with correct naming and replacing with plugin. Interesting. The replace with plugin in Unity would then instance objects within the engine. Else the mesh name in the inspector would all be different, and instancing would not work with externally imported assets. How do you do the same kind of thing in Unreal Engine? Unreal Engine will batch everything anyways. The Unreal Engine renderer is smarter than the Unity renderer. So it's not really something that you have to worry too much about. Like you can make you can directly actually make instant static meshes in Unreal, but it's unrealistic to build a map that way. Yeah, like this is just a static mesh that's being placed into the scene, right? So if I have an object that's going to create a bunch of things, then you want to do instant static meshes. But if I'm placing objects, the engine is smart enough to be like, oh, we have a bunch of these, they're going to be visible. We'll instance them strategically, right? At runtime kind of thing. Smoothing error while do you know how to fix that? Is your object okay, so the smoothing error, if you're not using smoothing, it doesn't matter. And chances are that you're probably not, so I wouldn't worry about it. Smoothing is something that you could apply, but if you're not if you're not actually using it, it just doesn't matter. I wish that it wasn't an error and it was a warning. It should be a warning because it largely does not matter, like the smoothing error. It might matter in very specific like styling settings. And that could be why Unreal has it as an error, even though like it doesn't actually really affect anything. I've never had it negatively affect anything. But effectively, like when you're exporting from like Unreal, from like Blender or something like that, there's a smoothing groups option. And if you're not using smoothing groups in your 3D modeling app, then importing with smoothing groups doesn't make any sense, right? But it's also like the smoothing groups thing is actually a checkbox in your import when you're doing it. I believe it's a checkbox in your import when you bring in a static mesh. But yeah, that's the smoothing groups thing you can entirely ignore. Like especially if you're using pre-built like purchased assets and they don't have smoothing groups, unless you want to go and add smoothing groups for some reason, ignore the warning or the error, I guess in this case. Just don't worry about it. Doesn't mean anything. It is scary though. I'll give you that. It is scary. Like I said, only way is ISM or well, the thing is that like you largely okay, so unless you're bringing something, so if all my trees, right, were one actor, right, then it makes sense to use instant static mesh directly or hierarchical instant static mesh directly, because those are those are being generated at runtime. Because these aren't being generated at runtime, the engine takes care of it for you. I think that this works on here. Yeah, so Vibber, the thing that you're doing in Unreal, oh sorry, in Unity, you don't have to do in Unreal. It's not something you worry about in Unreal. Well, what parts are you working on, Siricola? I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I don't think I am. When I import, all the trees are showing up as different individual actors, man. Yeah, but that's fine. Well, like, so the thing is though that like unless you're unless you're unless you're unless you're creating the tree at runtime, then the engine will take care of making sure that it gets batched correctly. Right? So like the trees, as long as as long as these trees are all the same, right? If they're visible, they get batched in together and they all get rendered together anyways in Unreal, right? So you don't need to make them instant static meshes. They already get the engine takes care of that for you in Unreal. Right? Now if I'm generating these at runtime, the engine doesn't take care of that for me and I have to explicitly do instant static meshes, right? Yeah, but so in Unreal, it depends on the material. Like it's not even dependent on the map. If like 60 different objects all use the same material, it will batch all of those together and send them together, right? To be rendered at the same time effectively. So it will send them in batches. So it's material. It's a material thing more so than it is a um than it is like an actual instancing thing. If they are placed in the world at edit time, if they are generated at runtime, it's a different story, right? So if it's generated at runtime, instant static meshes give you exactly what you're talking about, where they're all instanced together. They're sent in one block to the GPU, and the GPU batches it correctly, right? Hierarchical instant static meshes allow you to do like culling and stuff like that, so you can get even more performance out of it. By default, the entire world of placed actors, the key is placed actors, is hierarchical instant static meshed effectively together. It figures it out by itself, so you don't really have to worry about it. Now, if you've got like a cluster of something and you want to make sure that it's actually dealt with correctly, like for example, like say I've got like a pile of like 100 of these cones kind of like clumped together in some way, and I want to be able to like run through it and they all scatter or something like that in a specific manner. That might be something that I'd want to go in and be like, this is going to be like I'm going to do the whole instance static mesh thing together with this, right? But you don't have to do that for your entire world. It'd be too cumbersome. Was a 4K try tree instance 400 time would actually become? Well, okay, so Vivver, are you using nanite? So if we take a look at this tree is 7,374 triangles, right? But if I have nanite enabled, this tree is a performance problem. Just so you know, this tree is a nanite performance issue. So if you're using nanite, be very careful with things like trees, grass, and foliage. Because trees, grass, and foliage in nanite, you really, 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 really want to go to 6, 7, and you want to use nanite foliage, which is actual modeled geometry. Right? Because this is using cards. See? It's a card. This card means that this is not nanite performant. Right? So you got to be careful about that. But like, let's snooze at. I'll snooze that ad. Okay, so you know that about nanite. But yeah, like, uh, 400,000 tries is not that big for Unreal. Like I'm doing way more tries in my scene. Like my scene is incredibly high try, right? And then like if you're not using nanite, right, you can also like, one sec, I think I need to get this. Sorry about that. I had to take that. That was the cancer research people um setting up my appointment for my follow up. There we go. No, it's the cancer research people. It's the follow up from brain surgery. They're gonna tell me all the details about all the stuffs. I thought it was gonna be with the neurosurgeon, but no, it's with the cancer research people. That's a me bad. All right. I'm gonna have to make a quick call while this ad goes. So I'll be right back. There we go. Just say no. It's not. It's not it. Yeah. Well. Let's hope that it's not. And if it is, maybe it will be not serious or something. Who knows? I really got to fix that. Oh, I will. I'll be fine. Fooling around them not always fetching a new location is kind of annoying. I see -1. Here, -1 in just a moment. Yeah, you did. -1 is reverse. Or neutral? -1 is neutral. 0 is reverse. Neutral is -1. Just a matter of like working out what -1, like you just got to do a switch, and if it's -1 you just say, hey, actually just bring back an n. So yeah, it's not a big deal. All right, let me message my girly friend here. All right, let me figure out what's going on here. I got a bunch of messages here. And now when I import all the trees, they're different individual actors. But even if you duplicate the tree inside the engine, then Unreal would treat that as the same instance. Does the mesh not need to be the same to belong to the same batch? No. No, Unreal uses the material for batching. Yeah, the polycounts uh sorry, the polycount is both important but not important to batching. Because obviously like there's only a certain amount of space that you have access to for batching. So your objects need to be able to fit inside of those specific batches, right? So like if you've got an object that's like way too big, then it can't be batched with anything because it takes up all the space on your memory on your graphics card. Do do do. Even for nanite foliage and nanite trains, I would personally rather make them in ZBrush instead of the new nanite tree foliage for Unreal. Oh yeah. So when I asked about the nanite stuff, what trees and foliage, it doesn't matter where it's being made. It just matters whether or not you have the carding system, like grass cards or leaf cards or whatever, right? I need to replace like all the game actor object slash actors that are already placed externally in 3D software imported within the level in Unreal as instances, but they are not. Instead, my actors just list Nectar let's just go gets populated with true one and so on. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. Two objects are not allowed to have the same name in Unreal. That's a Unity thing. That's a Unity thing, not an Unreal thing. All actors in Unreal need to have their own unique name. So when they're imported, if they share a material, they can get batched together. If they don't share a material, they won't necessarily get batched together. The Unreal batching system is actually really, really, really good. So in Unity, these instance game objects would simply contain my scale transform values, and I would replace them with the same mesh component, all the game objects with trees in their name. Yeah. Okay, so in Unreal, right? Let's see. There's a way to do this. You can actually see the batching. Right? You can actually see like all the you can actually see performance metrics in Unreal like you can't in in uh um sorry, in Unity, right? So like Unity doesn't have some of this extra optimization tooling that Unreal has out of the box. But effectively what happens is if you've got one actor that shares a mesh, shares a material with another actor. Thanks, Squid. Yeah, so Viver, if we have two meshes that are completely different and whatnot, when they're in the world, when they're placed in the world, right? At from within the editor, right? Then if they all share the same, if we've got a bunch of different trees, right? And they all share a material, right? So the material is the same. The trees can be different. The material needs to be the same. Unreal will batch those together unless you generate them at runtime. If you generate them at runtime, you need to deal with your own instancing. Unreal will automatically batch them for you if they share materials. Unreal will just try and batch as much of the visible space that share materials as possible as one batch. Send that to the GPU to be performant. And that's definitely one of the big things that Unreal has over Unity. I think their batching is probably substantially better. At least that's my understanding of Unreal, based off of the technical stuff that I've read and watched in the technical videos that I've watched regarding how the batching works in Unreal. Is that like if you've got a bunch of objects that share materials, like even down to the material being like, so we can have multiple materials, right? Multiple material instances that are slightly different, but if they share a parent material, Unreal will try and batch them together if it can, right? But it obviously, like, if it breaks batching because like the material textures are too complex and different, then Unreal will obviously be like, it's too much, right? But Unreal by default will try and batch as much as humanly possible. And it's mostly based off of material, not mesh. Provided that your meshes are small enough to fit on the GPU properly. Right? Obviously, there's always caveats with the GPU. Like if your mesh is too big to be batched into a GPU slot, then obviously batching will just not happen. Does that help at all, Bibver? Also, let me see if I can find the thing that I was watching regarding this exact issue. Um, Unreal Engine batching. There's this one that's really good. Do this one, I think, is the actual one that I was thinking of. Maybe? No. There was one that was done by some. Let's see if I can even find it anymore. It's been so long. There was one where they had a specific like city up, and they were showing off batching in that in that environment, and it was really good. Unreal Engine batching. Yeah, but like, so if if you want to control instancing inside of Unreal, you have to do it through an actor. Like an actual blueprint actor. And then it's a matter of doing this, right? So like if I go to here, right? I would come into here and I would do instanced. Right? And then inside of here, I would have to do this, and this would do it at runtime, or I could do it here at the construct time here. And I think if I do it here, it can happen inside of the editor. I think this allows me to do it inside of the editor. But this here would then allow me to place them. But like, this is really cumbersome, and this is meant to be programmed against, right? So unless you really need to control these for some reason and you need them to be generated at runtime, you don't use a whole lot of instant static meshes unless you're actually running into an actual performance problem in Unreal, right? I know for like the flying game that you were doing, you want to draw like you would want to use unless this isn't for your drawing game, right? Um, your flying game. Sorry, I said drawing game. This is for your drawing game. You really want to try and paint the trees on using. Actually, wait. If this is for your flying game, this all going to be generated at runtime, isn't it? And in that case, you would want to use PCG as much as possible because that will give you proper instancing. Because it's or is the world not procedurally generated at runtime for your flying game? I'm not entirely sure how that works. Not runtime procedural. Okay. So you would want to try and paint your trees on inside of Unreal instead of hand placing them, right? Yeah. So in that case, are you running into performance problems? Is the major question, right? Like is there actually a performance issue that you're running into, right? Because by default you shouldn't have too much of a problem if they're being hand placed, right? So if you like in this case here, these shrubs and stuff like these, because these effectively are placed by hand in the editor. And I use quotes because I don't actually know how this person here got them. The person who made this map initially, I don't know how they got these in here placed individually. Some of these might be placed through like importing a USD file or something like that, right? Highly realistic and detailed level art is to squeeze in more art till I run into performance issues so I can get the biggest bang for the buck. Yeah, so like are you running into performance issues? Like do you have metrics that state that the problem is that things aren't being batched correctly? Cuz like instancing is just a matter it is a matter of batching in a specific type of manner, right? So like do you know if instancing will fix the performance issue that you're running into at the moment, or are you running into a performance issue at the moment? But also, if you really want to directly do instancing in Unreal, you need to use a blueprint and you need to tell the blueprint where you want to place each one. There might be another way to instance, but like as far as I know, that's the only way to directly be like this is 100% instanced is to directly do it yourself, right? And in that case, the trees are all individually instanced, right? So in that case, you would want to try and export the locations, like the coordinates, map those to like a CSV or a JSON file, and then read from that CSV or JSON file in Unreal, right? And because you don't care about them being instanced at runtime, you would create an actor that would instance them at construct time. Right? You'd read in the locations and place them, right? But you have to do it in an actor. It's interesting that for, but I do think that if the mesh, because Unreal's rendering engine is really smart. So if the meshes are the same, it might just default instance them anyways. I import instance FBX files. Still does not read in Unreal. Well, you might be able to get away with some of that if you use a USD. Like if I vary the scale rotation of these instances, it's a different mesh now. Yes. But it has to do more with like how you're importing it, right? Because the mesh is different technically, right? If you're importing FBX, because the idea of like an FBX being an instance is kind of odd to Unreal, right? Like it doesn't really see it that way. There's I wonder if what you want is the data pipeline. There's a name for it, and I'm forgetting the name. I want to say it's DCC. Because there's that data import system that works with a bunch of Unreal Engine Datasmith. That's what it was. I wonder if Datasmith is what you're looking for. I just don't know if it has this specific 3D app that you're working with as an option. No, I know that you're using World Machine, right? Um, they are, but they're not, right? So the PCG tooling inside of Unreal is more integrated with the rendering engine inside of Unreal. So it's going to do things that are going to be more performant, right? As far as like the ZBrush stuff is just effectively FBX files, right? Your world machine gives you should give you points of some kind, right? My understanding of like exactly what world machine is outputting is a bit like I'm not entirely sure what they're exporting exactly, but the idea is kind of there, I suppose. Right? So like it might give you enough information like if you can get the data out, like the location data out for where you want the trees to be, right? Placing them inside utilizing all right, let's take a look. Yeah, so like something like this is very doable inside of Unreal, right? And this is the ZBrush, right? If I'm not mistaken, it feels like ZBrush, right? You would export only placement chords like this. Yeah, so like if you can export just the placement, then you can place them all inside of an actor and use hierarchical um, uh, mesh, right? The instance mesh, right? Yes, those individual actors would be fully high poly nanite meshes. Hmm. I wonder if you're attacking this a bit differently than the what would be the keep in mind that when it comes to nanite stuff, I'm not incredibly knowledgeable, right? But when it comes to building worlds like this, right? Some of this stuff is might actually be best done inside of Unreal, right? As much as that's not really the answer that I know that you want, because you've done so much tooling outside of Unreal, right? I wonder if you'd even need to worry about it though, because like the entire idea of Nanite is it pre-processes everything on the CPU to send over to the GPU as little information as possible for the render. And that's one of the reasons why I can't use it, is because it's too CPU heavy. And I need to save as much CPU as possible for the units walking around, for the AI. And that's why I'm not using Nanite. And because I'm not using Nanite, I can't use Lumen, because Lumen requires Nanite to work properly. So why am I tackling it this way? Because I have gone so far down the rabbit hole with my external 3D software that I come up with a no, I'm not saying that like what you're doing is absolutely wrong in any way, right? I'm saying that like you've done so much tooling outside of Unreal, and I understand why you let me snooze this. And I understand why that would make you want to not retool inside of Unreal, right? But when it comes to scattering things, it might actually be better and more performant to do it inside of Unreal than trying to import things and do it yourself, because Unreal has systems inside of it to take care of that and make it more performant, right? Specifically with the PCG stuff, like the PCG stuff is really, really powerful. It's kind of, the PCG stuff sits between, it's like Houdini light, right? And Houdini is really like the go-to, right? I'm not disagreeing with that, right? Like I don't know the performance benchmarks of what you're doing right now versus the PCG alternatives, right? Do you mean like runtime performance is slower, or yeah, okay. That makes sense. Um have you I think I suggested a guy who was doing PCG stuff. Have you watched his stuff? Because he also might actually have better answers. Like he actually works professionally doing level development, right? Like at least historically. I don't know if he's currently working doing level development, or if he's between positions because he's working on his game full time. Because like he streams, and he might actually be like asking him these types of questions might actually be more like, he might actually have better answers than me. Because like the way that I would do it is different than the way that he would do it. Because I would do mine in Houdini, and Houdini's built around this, and it has direct imports that would control everything that you want, right? Because like I can create a Houdini HDA file that has the instancing built into it, right? And bring that into Unreal, and Unreal would then adopt the instancing correctly, right? And that's the way that I do mine when I'm working with stuff like that. If I was working with something like this, I would do it in Houdini, and Houdini would take care of the instancing for me. But that's why I'm thinking like the maybe Datasmith might be the right tool for bringing the data in and generating everything, because I believe that's what Datasmith is for, because it hooks into the 3D apps and allows you to transfer information over more seamlessly, right? So I wonder if Datasmith is kind of the answer to the tool to how you want to get your world inside of out from your application into like your 3D app into Unreal. Does Datasmith not cover instancing is the question though. I think that's because not a lot of people use ZBrush for that type of stuff. Industry wise, the industry standard in AAA and a lot of AA is going to be Houdini for what you're doing. Right? Like they might use something like World Machine to generate the height maps, right? And then they use Houdini and they might use ZBrush to create the assets. And then they do the scattering, the placement, and all of that, and the instancing within Houdini. And then you can bring that into Unreal, and Unreal will just adopt the Houdini instancing, like the Houdini dictated instancing. So it is possible, like because Houdini is capable of doing it, what you want is 100% possible. How to pull that off, though, I'm not entirely sure. Because, like, specifically, you want to take something out and bring it in. Now, with Unreal, you're not going to get... You can't export as far as I understand, you cannot export an FBX as an instance outside of maybe doing it as a USD, right? USD files. This allows for instancing, and you can import these into Unreal, and that might actually be the answer as well. That could be the other answer to you. Now, I think that sorry, give me a second here. I think the materials don't transfer cleanly into Unreal yet, but everything else should. Right? And USD allows for instancing. Ooh, Blender. There is a tool for Blender that goes directly into level editing for... No, I'm not saying for like Houdini is the answer for you. I'm saying that Houdini is the answer for like AA and AAA companies. For what you're doing, a lot of those companies, like bigger companies, will use Houdini for what you're doing. But because Houdini can do it, it means that it is 100% capable. Like it can be done. I just don't have the answer for how you would do it outside of Houdini because I use Houdini, right? But I was looking into USD, and USD has the concept of an instance, right? So in the exact way that we're talking about it, where it takes one FBX file and replicates it with just the transforms, right? So USD might be the way, and I know that Blender does USD exports. I don't know about ZBrush, but you would know because you have ZBrush, and I don't anymore. That's entirely fair, right? Well, so it in Houdini, like when you're doing the export for the HDA in Houdini, you set up the instances, right? And then you add the objects inside of Unreal, right? So it's like here are the trees, and then it has like a block, and then you would add in the tree meshes inside of Unreal, and the trees can be cones in the actual Houdini editor, right? But yeah, no, I'm like, I'm not saying use Houdini. I'm saying use the tooling that works best for you, right? Yeah, and I'm like I said, I'm not saying that you need to use Houdini. I'm saying like Houdini is used for this type of stuff, and so a lot of the tooling in Unreal is going to be around doing it in those more AAA, AA pathways, because that's kind of like where their focus is, right? But USD, the USD file format here actually is for bringing entire scenes through to different applications, right? So I wonder if USD would work. Yeah. So like I wonder if USD might actually be the answer to the issue you're having, right? I'm putting things out there just to bounce off you at this point, right? Because I don't entirely know what the end result issue is going to be, right? So the problem with USD was the export sizes were huge. Yeah, that's going to happen. So I think the way that I would try and tackle this personally, right? Like personally, if I was to try and tackle this inside of um the kind of system that you've got here where everything's generated inside of ZBrush, right? Can I get these coordinates out from ZBrush as just coordinates, right? Like mesh and coordinate, effectively FBX and coordinate, right? Then I'd bring that CSV or JSON file or however I end up formatting it, right, into Unreal, create an actor, and do it in the construct strip, right? So if I've got a JSON file, I would just do it in the construct. I'd read the JSON file and then I'd do it in the construct strip. Yeah. Because the only way to get an instance static mesh thing is to actually use a blueprint, right? So it would be here, and then we can place a instance static mesh inside of here through this static mesh here, right? And this can have more than one. One sec. Let me click the right thing here. You can have more than one um, instance static mesh component, and I can't remember if you can have more than one static mesh inside of an instance static mesh, right? But I'd have to double check. Although for you, I'd say a hierarchical instance static mesh is probably more what you're looking for, right? But this requires a little bit more programming. Yeah, so that's Manadono. Thank you for the raid. Much appreciated. I hope you enjoy your fireworks. How was the rest of your stream? That the nanite pipeline would kill the need for a hierarchical? It might. Like, you could try it. Just do everything as a nanite mesh and see if it's performant enough, right? If it doesn't meet your performance needs, then you would have to try and figure something else out. One sec, I think I gotta take this. Fuck, I thought this was gonna be that was a call for medical shit, not a fucking scam call. Nanite plus voxel, no alpha quads. I have not explored this before. Wait, does Vulkan not support fully support Nanite? Is it like a DirectX only thing? I mean, trying to connect you about your brain's extended warranty. Yeah, pretty much. Interesting. They're working on Vulkan. Interesting. I never really looked into Nanite too far. Mainly because I don't even think that my game's using. I think I put my game into DX11. Like I actually think it's in DX11. DX12. Yeah, I don't even think that I have DX12 enabled. I mean, you will need LODs and HLODs. They do different things. I think even with Nanite, you need HLODs. There is, now this is the hard part because I am not that knowledgeable when it comes to Nanite. There is a guy who Nanite performance. There's one guy specifically that I'm thinking about here for Nanite stuff. I don't think it's this guy. He has a very good, and it's never threat interactive. That guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Because you want somebody that's worked in the industry on Unreal. This guy. This guy here actually has more answers for what you're looking for than I would, unfortunately. This guy knows his stuff. Something in this guy's stuff might actually be able to answer some of those questions that you've been having. With the Majestic Stash. I don't know if you've come across him yet or not. Oh, okay, so you've come across this guy. I think the other problem is that not enough people have actually done tutorials and stuff like that on working with Nanite specifically. And since I've never actually really worked with Nanite, I don't know if I'm the right person to answer all of your questions. I wanna start abuse polycounts. We can definitely do that. This is such a it's such a like a specific problem to your project though. Makes it really hard to like answer questions in some aspects, right? Because like I wanna be able to give you advice, but like the problem is that like I just don't have enough experience to give you good advice. I can put out theoretical things that might be able to help. But I think when it comes to like world building, you're probably the most knowledgeable person in this conversation. I think you did. Okay. Well, hopefully I did. I have no concave geo allowed. I think one time blueprint to create that replaces with like system I had in Unity. Yeah, that or maybe a series of them. I'm not sure what would be the best way. You'd have to test what works best for you for that. But you do want to probably use the hierarchical instant static mesh for this. Because that way things get called. You could also do it as a no, because I would still have to generate um an actor. Yeah. Really, really. What? Yes, Manadono. Yes. Really, many reallys. All the reallys. I'm surprised that PCG is too slow for this, though. I've not used PCG, so. Yeah, man, I don't know. He's done some crazy ass shit in ZBrush, which is great. I love that he did this in ZBrush. It makes me so happy. Makes me so happy to see somebody abusing ZBrush this way. That's really cool. Again, I love that you are abusing ZBrush in this manner. It makes me so happy. AC5 mod. I don't know. He's not looking for low poly. He's looking to abuse nanite. Yeah, but that first version isn't what he wants in the game. This version is what he wants in the game. No, these are not. That's Geo. You're looking at Geo. This is ZBrush. ZBrush doesn't have textures. This is the placement, and then this is the sculpted version. Yeah, ZBrush doesn't do. Yeah, but like I mean, like in the traditional sense that Manadono's thinking about, because Manadono's looking at this and being like, this is just effectively um a textured version of this, right? Like with like normal maps and stuff like that. That's not how this is being achieved. This is Geo. That's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out the best way to get this out of like ZBrush into Unreal in a way that actually makes sense. Yeah, so we're trying to figure out how do we get this out of like what's the best way to get this out of ZBrush into Unreal but instanced. That's not that that that's that doesn't work. Then each mesh is unique. Because this world exists inside of ZBrush. Yeah. So these meshes are unique if you just export them as FBX files and bring them in because they're all different. They're all like turned or whatever, right? So what we were thinking is you take the positions from here as a like CSV file or something like that or JSON. Then you bring them into an actor and you use an instance or a hierarchical instance static mesh and then reconstruct it from the positions. That was at least our thought. Vibver and I were that's what we were talking about. Yeah. So it sounds like that's the way to go. I'm still super impressed with what you have managed to do inside of ZBrush. It's super cool to see. You want to do that, but as an editor actor, so you can spawn static meshes and then use the engine batching. Is the engine batching going to be slightly faster than than at runtime than instancing? I guess I could kind of see that happening. But that's only if the meshes are the same. Yeah, but you got to remember that Unity and Unreal is going to be super different. Mhm. Yeah, but Viv for Manadona saying that the the system that Unreal would use out of box might actually be more performant than trying to instance them yourself. My question is, have you oh wait, but like when you're doing the export, you're getting a bunch of unique FBXs, right? Manadono, he does want to he wants to have, yeah, so like if it's a sorry. So Vibver, what Manadono is suggesting is that you can create an actor that runs inside of the editor and does the placement inside of the editor, right? So it populates this here with the same meshes. It just places a mesh wherever it needs one. And then instead of it being done at runtime, right? It's done in editor. And then you have them inside of here effectively. And then because they're inside of here, they can be batched differently. And you don't have to worry about the instancing. And Unreal will take care of the rest for you. Because Unreal does take care of instancing for you, right? So like if these two trees have the same mesh and the same material, it will instance them by default. Yeah. So effectively like populating using an actor inside of the editor and not using an instancing system might actually work as well. But the only so all of this is theoretical, right? It's something you'd have to test to see if it works. Yes, but if you export them because like if they actually are the same mesh and you export one mesh for them and then you have them placed using your JSON location, rotation, sizing, then they're still the same mesh, right? Because you're just using one mesh instead of 1,000 meshes, right? I think that might also be the problem that you were having with the USDs being really large because USDs do have the concept of instancing, right? Yeah, so you still export like your however many individual trees you have, and then you have them placed in the editor instead of having them rotated and located at different as different FBX files, right? Well, it's one file, and it's you use the JSON data that you've exported from ZBrush to place them in the world. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you have them being placed, yeah. So that would be the way to go. The reason why I was thinking maybe USD is because USD does have the idea of instancing, but you do have to set it up. And I don't know, like I've not played around enough with USD to say whether or not you were setting it up correctly or not, right? Because the reason why your USDs might have exploded the way that they did is because they might have not been instancing the this the static meshes, right? Yeah. I'm not familiar with nano meshes. but the USD format, so like if you go from ZBrush into Blender, I know Blender exports USD, and if you can get the world set up instanced correctly in Blender, and you can get it to export and keep the instances in the USD file, then you can bring that into then you should be able to bring that into Unreal, and Unreal should honor the instances. Unless that's currently broken in Unreal, but I don't believe it is. Keep in mind that the USD stuff in Unreal is still early days and not great. So, but there's a level building system, and this might actually solve your problem altogether, right? If you've already got the world inside of Blender already set up in its instance correctly, I wonder if that Blender there's a Blender plugin thing for Unreal, Blender to Unreal live link. There's like a Blender Unreal live link thing that allows you to like actually edit inside of Blender, and it shows up directly inside of Unreal. And I wonder if that would honor the instancing the way that you're looking for. I want to say it's this, but I might be wrong. Oh, okay. At the very least, we know that if you can get the instance locations out from ZBrush, you can at least build an actor out, a blueprint actor out in Unreal, and just have that work, right? So oh yeah, I could see that. I don't know if this is the exact one that I'm thinking of, but this creates a link, so it just brings everything in, and it's really cool. I could have swore there was one specifically that was like a paid version thing, and it was really, really good and really cool. Maybe Polylink? And it was specifically for editing worlds, like specifically for world building. Hmm. Fucking ass. And back to GPU software, in which case I might as well have used Houdini. It was a fast ad. That's hard to say. It's such a like user specific situation, which is kind of the poopy part, right? Which makes it like really hard to give you the most accurate information, right? Because it's so dependent on your project. I think JSON plus blueprint idea might work well. I think based off of what you've currently built, that might be the best way to do it. Because like I'm fairly certain based off of what it sounds like ZBrush is capable of ripping through that instancing system to give you the JSON output. It might see how well Unreal works with JSON, Unreal Engine JSON. because it might end up being better to do a CSV file. Because I know that Unreal supports CSV out of the box. I don't know if it does JSON right out of the box. Yeah, 100%. You just have to do an instance. Like there's actually placement tools specifically for that type of stuff. Ooh. Unreal Engine FBX scatter, right? So there's 100%. You don't need PCG for this either. Yeah. Yeah, you'd effectively just like have a list of we would do like this, right? And you would just have like static mesh. And then we would turn this into maybe a map. And this would be the static mesh here. And then this would be maybe like a string or a text. And then you would parse out your JSON, and your JSON would tell you what mesh to use. And this would have a list of meshes in it. And when I compile this becomes something that I can add to. Like that. Yeah. Hey, sometimes that's all you really need, right? I'm happy that I was able to help. I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with, dude. I want photos when you're done. Experimental mesh nodes, and you can manipulate everything down to the vertex if you're crazy and want to go crazy. Maybe. Yeah, no worries. It's probably going to take a while to build, right? Because you might have to switch over to CSV because CSVs don't work directly. Sorry, JSON isn't directly supported in Unreal, so you might need to get like a plugin. I wonder if Fab has a JSON plugin. If it does, it's not free. Oh, there it is. Yay, it's free. There we go. This is what we want. Because if I'm not mistaken, the construct here runs at placement time, right? So, or move, right? Like when it moves or is placed. So the other option would be a editor script. Might also work. It's one of the things that I really like about Unreal compared to Unity. An editor script would be cool. I know Manadono knows a little bit about doing that in Blueprints. I've done a little bit of it in Unreal, but it's all. This is my editor script here, and this is capable of placing inside of the world, right? But this is all C++. Sorry, this is all C++. Uh yeah. Yeah, I think you could vibe code it, but I would suggest if you're gonna vibe code it, use a CSV, not a JSON file. I think that vibe coding would fall apart for that. Or alternatively, just use blueprints. Because you can absolutely do editor scripts just with blueprints. Like editor tooling can be developed with blueprints. So I'd suggest just do that. But if you really want C++, you could absolutely vibe code it. Um, Mainly because like what you're looking to do isn't isn't particularly complicated because you have all of the complicated parts done inside of ZBrush already, right? Yeah. And like one way to do it would be to write like a small Python script or something like that, or whatever, right? Like a small script that just takes JSON and converts it to a CSV file. And that might make your life a little bit easier inside of Unreal, because then the CSV can be loaded into a data table. And data tables are easier to work with. And I'll be here all week, so you can always ask me questions, Bibver. Where were we on this? Right, we needed the on exit. And overlap. Static mesh collision. We want the destructible environment here. We try. We try. If we all work together, we'll definitely get further than if we try and hoard knowledge. Just you know, you're like, no, I don't want to share. Let's make better games together. Okay, so this should work. Might need to make the sphere a little bit bigger though. there. And then if I go here, let's go run over to here and we'll place some of these down so we can run into them. I should test this on a different map. Try not to worry too much about what's going on. Right. I forgot to do something. There we go. It works. Yep, this is kind of what we want. Perfect. Okay, so then what we want to do is we want a timer. Okay, and then we want a timer to actually turn off the simulation. Set timer. Turn off physics. Yeah, but that might be an experience thing. There we go. So now it stays on, simulating physics until the timer's up, and then it stops. And in which case we want that to then also reset it, right? So then we take this and then we despawn it, right? We set visibility. And set collision there, and then we go to the static mesh and we do collision. We want no collision. So you've compiled. Oh, I know. This is supposed to be block all. Okay, and then this, we want to set another timer event. This, custom event, respawn. Set relative transform. There, and then on begin play, we're going to cache the relative transform here. Get relative transform. Promote to variable. Now, this is not correct. just let's put this out there. This is not correct. Actually looks like things like dragon heads and dogs barking and stuff. So the reason why I clean up my nodes right away is because I like my code clean. Cleaner your code is, the easier it is to maintain long term. Collision. Reset. New. Actually, wait. No, this is correct. Never mind. Cancel. Because because this generate hit events there. No. This is not hit events. We want this one to have generate hit events. This doesn't need overlap events. Now, when we do this, we can come down here. Wait, what? Where's my hit? Do I need overlap events for this? Yeah, this doesn't have any events. Oh wait, no. Yeah, sorry, it does. I was filtering them out. That's why. Component hit. This is what we want here. There we go. Sorry. I try to produce the same level of code for external view as I do for internal view for code quality. I don't have two different standards. I only have one standard. I think this is getting complicated enough now that it makes sense to move this from from blueprints to C++. I think down the line the industry will come back to clean ways of doing code. I feel like it is nanites, frankly. Well, I'm gonna. Do you want to know the truth? Is that if you look at Google source code, like actual internal Google source code, it is a mess. Most companies are a mess. Do you want to know the one company that I've worked at that actually has clean code? One. I've worked at one company that has clean code. When I say clean code, I don't mean like by the definition of the book clean code. I mean like actual, like clean, readable, easy to understand code. And it's the score ebet. Score bet. This product has clean code. They are anal as fuck about their code quality. The code quality on this site, for the APIs and front end for this product are unbelievably stringent. It's down to like, this is not named 100% accurate. Rename it before we will merge this. There's almost no hacks implemented in it. And if a hack is required to get something out on time, it is actually taken care of in the next sprint. Like, it is taken care of. It is mandatory that it is taken care of. I don't know about the other sports betting places. I know that this sports betting place, they are hardcore, like insanely hardcore. I know because I worked here. It's daunting how hardcore they are. Good in Hindi. Good. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. But yeah, these guys are hardcore. But the reason they're so hardcore is because it's required, right? It's damn near required because like the amount of regulatory red tape that goes into pushing to production is insane. So in order to push a patch to production, you have to get the state government to sign off on your patch before it can go to production. So it's just crazy. So they want to avoid they've gone out of their way to make it hard to write code in such a way that it is hard for somebody else to understand what is going on. So when somebody reviews your code, it is very obvious if you have missed something, right? And that way multiple people can review your code, sign off on it relatively quickly. And because of that, they actually have a very easy time developing new features. But only because it is so incredibly hardcore about their code quality. And they use Elixir. Their code quality is fucking crazy, though. They're also very macro heavy, which that adds a layer of confusion, but like once you get used to it, it's very simple. Like it adds a lot of quality of life improvements, but like the macro stuff gets really confusing at first. Great company though. Very intense, but great company. Yeah, their product, they use a lot of macros. Because like they have to keep records of everything. And and all of this for like regulatory stuff. So they've done stuff where like they have like if I remember correctly, it's been a number of years since I worked there. They have 2 tables for every table, right, in the database. So when you set up a table and you're iterating, you're going through it, right? And you need to you make a change. That change has to get replicated into another table to dictate that the change has happened. So you have both versions. You have every version of that record ever, right? And it creates a situation where macros allow that to be happen very cleanly, and it's entirely hands off. Like effectively one person wrote the code that does it, and then you use the macro and it just takes care of it for you. But macros in Elixir integrate kind of like a class, more or less in other languages. Is the easiest way to describe them. Okay, so on hit, so here we have to check whether or not this is hit. So on hit, what we're going to do is we're going to disable overlap on the sphere, right? This doesn't do here. But I need to make sure that this is not generating physics. Oh, sorry. This might work. I'll have to double check. Here we go. Bam. Let's do a Boolean. Sorry, this will be so this is a Boolean. There, and then we're going to do the same down here. Reset. There, and sphere. There, and then up here we want to test this. So get I was actually thinking about how this one simple logic of code cleanup at a purely functional level of thinking in ZBrush makes a software that manhandle polycount like even Unreal has only barely been able to handle only now with the same hardware. And I saw a YouTube video which was a total gem that explained the fundamental logic to me that really blew my mind. And at that point, I knew the industry would be shifting towards that side of things as much as the community hates Maxon. There ain't nothing out there yet which can do asset creation like this software can yet. Meanwhile, ZBrush has already been there for more than a couple of decades now. ZBrush is going to be replaced. ZBrush will be replaced just because ZBrush doesn't iterate and the tooling will eventually fall off. I don't know how many years it's going to be, but ZBrush will eventually be replaced because Maxon doesn't actually put money into developing it. To be fair, Pixel Logic barely put money into developing it. Although I think that's just because like they didn't really have the money to put into building new features. Maxon has the money to build new features, but they're not going to do it. They just look at ZBrush and is like, oh, hey, if I turn this crank, it prints money. It's like, oh, that's possible. I haven't been following their release notes. But their release notes are super underwhelming all the time. It's like, hey, we added a rendering engine. That was like an entire year's patch. And it's just like nobody wanted it. Like I say nobody wanted it. There's definitely a subset of people that actually wanted it, but like I've never talked to anybody that uses it. Everybody's just like, it's shit. Yeah, but like it's like they add like one or two things a year max. Right? Like their release notes for a year of work is like this. They're fundamentally different products. It's getting Topogun, like actual Topogun, or something Topogun like. No, no. ZBrush is a very specific. It's like a doom buggy for off roading versus a sedan for driving in the city. They're both vehicles, but they're different, right? Yeah, ZBrush is a hyper specialized application. No, Blender is up against Houdini, Maya, and ZBrush. And Substance. The thing is that like Blender might not compete at an acceptable level on all areas, but Blender does compete with all of those software. Pieces of software, right? Like, is it Blender is a Swiss Army knife in the if we push down what Manadono is getting at, because Manadono is looking solely at price, right? Yeah, it's a jack of all, a master of none, but eventually Blender will be better than Maya because Blender actually updates, right? And Maya doesn't innovate, right? Maya doesn't add features really, right? Like when they do, it's like we're adding these 3 features this year, right? where when Blender goes at it, it's like Blender has like a bunch of things that they add every year, right? Yeah. But like the same thing's starting to already happen between sculpting in Blender and sculpting in ZBrush, right? Because I entirely get why ZBrush is so good, because it handles super high poly counts on low end systems like nothing else. But that doesn't mean that Blender isn't slowly catching up. And I say slowly because I do mean slowly. It is it is they are the tortoise. Sorry. Uh they are the tortoise to ZBrush as the hare, right? There if the hare stands still long enough, the tortoise will pass them, right? Blender at its core to get to a point to compete with a specialized software like ZBrush. Not if ZBrush stands still long enough. But that's the thing. If ZBrush stands still, it continues to stand still long enough, Blender will eventually pass it. And I use the word I'm using eventually very specifically, because eventually could be 20 years from now. It could be 10 years from now. It could be 5 years from now. It could be 100 years from now. Eventually, if ZBrush stands still long enough, Blender will overtake it. That's very possible, right? Like, and my entire statement relies on ZBrush standing still. So if ZBrush picks up their bag and actually starts walking forwards or running forwards, then Blender doesn't stand a chance ever at catching up, right? But there's also only so far that you can push something before it becomes no longer industry standard, right? Now, ZBrush, with where it's at right now, right? Like with where it's at right this moment, as long as it keeps going forward and innovating, I don't see a world where Blender catches up. So if they have started innovating finally, now that it's under Maxon over Pixel Logic, then then this becomes a moot discussion, and you're absolutely right that Blender will never catch up. Oh yeah. Well, it depends, right? Like comparing clean web code to like clean 3D code is a very you can't always have clean code be performant. Sometimes clean code, like clean readable code, will affect your performance in a detrimental way, right? So like clean code is not going to be performant code like 50% of the time. If you need to eke out the maximum amount of performance from something, it's not going to be clean. Yeah, you can share a video. But you're this is the same, like again though, like hardware changes over time, right? Hardware hardware gets effectively cheaper for the performance. So a beast of a system today in 20 years is not going to be a beast, right? So if in 20 years we're still sculpting at the same poly counts that we're sculpting at right now, which is increasingly more likely. Although it's hard to say, right? It and you can absolutely share a video. Well, we can take a look. We can take a watch, right? But like the the thing is that like hardware's not staying where it is. So hardware will change, hardware will get faster. And if we wait long enough and ZBrush stands still long enough, and again, you have to give me that ZBrush has to stand still, which they historically have stood still. Whether or not they will continue to stand still is a different story. And this is why Blender is able to catch up to Maya, is because Maya's been standing still for so long, right? And Blender will overtake Maya because eventually Maya will have stood still long enough, right? And the same thing will happen to ZBrush if ZBrush stands still. Has not stood still. They kind of have. And I'm not disputing that. I haven't followed the patches since ZBrush was bought out. So I will yield to you that they're not standing still anymore. But historically, they have stood still under pixel logic, right? That's good. If Maxon is actually pushing it, then again, my statement about ZBrush standing still is moot because ZBrush isn't standing still anymore, right? Let's take a look.
What we in ZBrush as sculptors work with is we work with polygons.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the beginning, early days, there was this debate between texture mapping with UVs and poly painting. So, at that point, O'Furlong made a decision. He wanted polygons to be the basis of everything, so he could keep the code very efficient. He didn't want to involve UVs, and then from there go out to a texture map that would then get applied back via rendering to wherever those polygons are, or actually go back to the UVs and then go to poly. It's a whole bunch of excessive overhead that he didn't want to get involved in. So what he did with poly painting, is he made polys also equal texture. Each polygon was essentially a pixel. So not just a texture. Another way to say that is each polygon equals a pixel. And then we saw insert multi-mesh brushes come along. So a polygon equals a pixel, but it also equals a model. So within a polygon, you can get a model that then is made up of polygons. And the whole thing is able to kind of cycle around and around and around. It's a very efficient way of working. You have one thing that we deal with. We deal with polygons. From those polygons, we can turn them into textures. We can turn it into entire full models. And then we can turn those full models back into polygons and do other things with it, such as array mesh. So let's get in and see a little bit more about nanomesh and how I used it in this example. So if I just kind of rotate this around, you'll see it starts to move. It's full 3D, including that background. See that background in there? The way this background was created is actually going to become the fastest way for you to get in and see what this is all about. So I'm just going to come in and select a plane, let's say a polyplane 3D. I'm going to turn frame on, and that's about how many flowers there were there. I'm going to convert this to a polymesh because that's a primitive. And then I go into the Z modeler brush. So I already got it selected, and I actually have a couple of Z modelers down here. So let me just show you this real quick. Nanotube. Now we hover over a face, a polygon face, and we say insert nanomesh, and we say all polygons. And then we just drag something out. And immediately come into nanomesh. Now don't worry about the placement, don't worry, did you get it right? All of that's going to get adjusted. You just need to put something into play. You just need something to be sitting there. So I'm going to set the size to 1, and we're going to remove the rotation. And we're going to set it to fit. That way it's fitting within that polygonal space. So by that I mean, let me just take size and take it down a notch. You see that now there's a little bit of space between the tubing that I'm using.
Yeah, but that's fine. Like, well, everything in ZBrush is based off of their Z pixel or something like that, and it's all 2D, right? Because like ZBrush is actually a 2D app. It's not actually technically 3D, right? But like, you can get they can add this, right? Like they can add nano meshes to Blender. That can be added, right? So if nano meshes is the only thing that's preventing Blender from overtaking ZBrush, then it's not really something that needs to be worried about because they can already do it. They can add it. It can be added, right? But also, like, again, even with the current okay, so if we look at the current requirements to do the same thing in ZBrush in Blender, yes, ZBrush is always going to be more performant because it is just a more performant application because they have the patents on that on their tech, and their tech is just superior for rendering, right? The super high poly stuff. So at what point does that become not really something that people care about? Because you got to remember, there was a point when SQL databases were the idea of having an SQL database was so like it was like, we do not have the compute in order to do SQL databases right now, so they are paper and pen, right? Like it's here's a paper on how it would work. The idea of actually implementing this and running it is stupid, right? Because like this is just going to be too unperformant, right? But then now the idea of now we cram SQLite databases into things and do SQL all the time, and it's like lightning fast and crazy efficient, right? And the only thing that changed was computers got faster, right? So at some point, computers are going to be fast enough that even with the performance degradation of going from ZBrush to Blender, right? There's not really a situation where like computers are going to stay the same speed, right? So like eventually stop. Yeah. But again, though, my statement around Blender beating out ZBrush relies on ZBrush not updating correctly, and you've already stated that Maxon has been putting resources into actually keeping ZBrush updated, right, and pushing forward with it. So at that point, no, then my statement about Blender catching up is doesn't exist, because if Maxon is actually putting resources into pushing ZBrush forward, ZBrush will just outpace it because it's a better application, because it's more purpose built, right? So I prefer ZBrush over Blender, by the way. Where are we on this? I wouldn't say that. I think it still has a place. At the very least, I don't see like big studios replacing ZBrush with Blender anytime in the near future. Like anytime. Like that's at least 10, 20 years out, right? At like the earliest. At the earliest possible theoretical replacement for like industry standard stuff, ZBrush being replaced by Blender would be like at least 10 to 20 years from now. It could happen. It might not happen. Right? Maya's getting closer because like it's mainly because of indies though. But for like indie development, I think is a lot of there's quite a few indie developers that are doing sculpting in Blender. But that just comes down to price point, right? Like that is solely price point. That has nothing to do with like Blender being a superior application in any way, shape, or form. That just comes down to, I don't have the money for ZBrush. Or ZBrush is too expensive. Yeah, no, it is, but it isn't, right? Like, because like it is in the sense that if somebody replaces part of their tooling with it, regardless of whether or not, like the most direct competition for Blender is Maya, right? 3D Max, right? And stuff like that. But like Houdini and Blender are competing now because Blender released GeoNodes, and that's effectively like the fundamentals of Houdini is just GeoNodes. The entire system revolves around a GeoNodes like system. So GeoNodes are fundamentally like competing with Houdini now. Now, in order for Blender to overtake Houdini for that type of system, a lot more work needs to be done. Like a metric fuck ton. They're not even close to catching up, right? And Houdini is a specialized app, right? Does Maya even have something like GeoNodes? Yeah, no, Maya's still 100% beating them out for, I think, rigging and animations. Like 100%. I've heard that Houdini's getting close with animations and rigging for to Maya. I think it's starting to get close, but you still need somebody that knows Houdini, and a lot of animators are very resistant to learning Houdini's. Ah, I hate ads. Hmm. Okay, I think that about sums it up there. Add over? Yeah. No, I've heard that Houdini's starting to catch up with parts of it regarding like animation stuff. Because I know they've been really trying to push it, right? Did I forget to? No. Okay, sweet. It's doing it. Look, it works. That is fair. Well, wait. Why do I only have one? That's not right. Houdini is a very purpose-built app, and if it's not quite what you're looking for, it is definitely going to be a little bit on the actually wait. This should probably just respawn it at this point. I think they were falling through the map. Yeah, it fell through the map or something. Maybe? Oh, wait. What? That's not right. Oops. Yeah, it's not teleporting the way that I want it to. So, like, if it's terrain and environment, I would not use Houdini anymore. Yeah, VM, etc. Maybe. For Sims, there's Embergen and LiquidGen. For destruction, there's Unreal / Blender and general GeoNodes. Plus, Python does not seem too far from Houdini nodes with C++. But oh man, the sheer attributes you have to mug up if you use Houdini is it's nuts. That's too far for what simulated stitches and strange foam animations. Well, I'm not in that VFX side of things as much. That's the thing though, like Houdini is VFX and that is its target market. So, and for VFX, it's really good. And yes, you have Ambergen, LiquidGen for simulations for like card stuff, in game stuff and whatnot. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But at the end of the day, for like a production system, which again, Houdini, you've got to also keep in mind who the target market of Houdini is, and Houdini's not target market is not indie, right? So it's larger double A's and mostly triple A's and stuff like that, and for film, it's mostly film and like game uses it, right? So the pipelining is super important, right? And this one I've talked with people, like I've got a friend who works in the industry doing VFX stuff, and there's one piece of software that we spoke about specifically, right? And I can't speak for Embergen and LiquidGen, but I can speak for Gaia. WM World Machine, I'm not sure if it has Houdini inputs. Gaia has a new Houdini node, right? So Gaia could be used, right? So specifically, there's a clothing app that's really popular. What was the name of it? Marvelous Designer. Marvelous Designer doesn't get used in 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 big budget companies a lot of the time because it doesn't integrate with Houdini. Like it not integrating with Houdini is actually a problem. And there is no integration system for Marvelous Designer. So like I've talked to somebody else who worked in film, and they knew of a company that integrated, like went out of their way to integrate with Marvelous Designer specifically, and it was like a hacky system to get Marvelous Designer into their pipeline, because pipeline is just so important, and Marvelous Designer does not hook into a pipeline. I imagine based off of who made Embergen and Liquidgen that they probably have a pipeline that you can hook into whatever your current pipeline is, whether it's Houdini or something else, right? But you need to have pipeline. There has to be pipeline. If you're working on anything at scale, you need pipeline. Like you need that pipeline, and a lot of that pipeline gets glued together with Houdini because Houdini has access to everything already, right? Whether or not it's the fastest is kind of irrelevant because you can just turn on it overnight. And stitching stuff are still Houdini pipeline specific for VFX movies level kind of stuff. Well, no, it's just like they would adopt Marvelous Designer if Marvelous Designer had pipelining, but Marvelous Designer doesn't pipeline with anything. Like you have to stitch it together, and that just becomes impractical. And that's really Houdini's market is VFX in movies. Like film is really where they thrive. But like if you look at Spider-Man is a great example of what you can do with Houdini. Like the Spider-Man games. Spider-Man game. This one here specifically. This one here, the entire city and quests, like side quest system, was all built in Houdini. Right, because they could pipeline everything in, and they could have Houdini pipeline in to set the values for things and stuff like that. So it's kind of crazy. Uh, maybe. I think it's just like once you get to a certain company size, Houdini makes a lot of sense. But before you get to that size, Houdini's just added price and complexity. Because like if you're a small enough company, the idea of having somebody who's specifically an expert at Houdini, right, which you kind of need to do some of the stuff, some of the really cool stuff, is just like, why would we do this? Because like we don't need the type of pipeline that you need on these larger projects, right? Yeah, it's not the fastest at a lot at like certain things, but yeah, it's like you can you can do a lot of pipeline stuff in Houdini, which is really, in my opinion, one of the most powerful parts of Houdini. Because yeah, you're right. Like Embergen and Liquidgen are far more performant. Possibly one of the most powerful controlled stuff. Yeah. Yeah. But like again, like if you're a small enough company, that doesn't really matter, right? Yeah, like you said, the standardization for pipelining stuff is super important. Although I know for film, they're moving to, like, a lot of studios are moving to just use USD because of because it just integrates with everything out of the box. I wonder when I'll see a Houdini Blender integration. That seems like it's coming. Because, like, geonodes, to my understanding, can be more performant for certain types of tasks than the Houdini system. At least this is what I've been told. Like, Houdini's a bit slower and sluggish feeling compared to geonodes for certain tasks. Yeah. I'm just super, super practical is what it really comes down to. This is not the right loop. I want to see all the big 3D softwares actually move in a good direction. Okay, so we turn off simulation. We don't worry about visibility because we're just going to reset it right away. So we can do that. We don't worry about this. We're just going to set it back to we're going to set it back to block all. Okay, and then what else do we need? We need to set the relative location. We don't need to worry about this. Don't need to worry about this. And set this to this and generate overlaps. Perfect. Okay, I think we're good on this. I think this should work. Let's set this to a more reasonable time of, let's say, 2 seconds. It fell. Of course it fell. So we turn off simulating physics. This reactivates it. That shouldn't be happening. That was the problem. Yeah. Stop that. There we go. I think we got it. Did I not get the relative location? I'm gonna go like this. F9. Interesting. Oh, wait, we want that. Save. I added to a specific one. Maybe? There we go. Okay, so we've entered. What's our transform look like? Let's do this here. Do F9. But then this resets it back to the wrong spot. That's not correct. Oh, weird. I think I know what I did wrong. We could get world location, and then that would entirely solve the problem, I think. Okay, so it's about to. It should populate back in right here, if this works. And it did not. All right, we're not doing relative location anymore. Get transform. Yeah. I do wish that that wasn't the case, but I think it's going to be. There we go. Now, can we go back and run it over again is the next question. And the answer is yes. Okay, we can run it over now. My friends are telling me I should update my profile website first before I get into my game. It's 6 to 7 years old now. Do you need to, though? Stop. Rawr. Well, what's the purpose of the site? Are you looking for work? You're gonna call it a day here? I can feel you on that. Gonna get some shut eye. I'm also thinking about calling it a day. I got destructibilities down. Now I gotta go replace all of the things with destructible units. There's so much destructibleness that needs to be done inside of the main area. See you next time. All right. See you next time. That might be tomorrow. I'm happy that I like that we can have a conversation about these things. It's always nice being able to have that conversation. You learn so much by talking. See you, Mom.
Probably
Yeah,
so
think
you
about
guys
who I
know
want
I'm
to
still
raid.
alive and
We're gonna raid somebody. It looks like we're gonna raid an artist though. Hmm. Let's give Lucid a raid. Lucid's a very talented 3D artist. All right. Thank you to everybody who showed up and everything. I'm gonna call it a night and go take a nap or something. I will catch you all tomorrow. All right. Ta-ta for now.